while we're getting people to tune in and waiting for the the actual link to pop in. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I mean, when did this, as far as you remember, when did this general issue first come around? I remember in 2017 it became a big thing, but did people talk about this like in 2016 or anything? Do you remember?
I was looking at the document that I wrote to kind of summarize what my thoughts were on this, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it was dated like early 2016 actually. And I know that
Mm.
we were talking about it for years before that, so it's been a while. It got a lot more heated, not heated, but just active in 2017 because of the price rise.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, it's even before it got going in Dash, it was a hot topic in Bitcoin and all the other coins as well.
Yeah. Do you know if in Bitcoin there was ever a serious discussion of doing technical changes?
No, I don't think so.
Mm.
It was a bunch of wheel spinning. People talked about it a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
I, the closest thing that I saw in Bitcoin to any kind of progress was that Bitcoin improvement proposal, which was what's his name? He's a Bitcoin maxi.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he was
There's oh so
covering
many
all
of them.
yeah, he was covering all the fork wars and everything, and that's how he got big. Jimmy Song, yeah, he
Okay.
actually wrote a dip about it.
Wow. To
Not a
like
dip,
fix it.
a bip. Yeah, yeah, and
Mm.
his recommendation, maybe we'll get into that a little bit. His recommendation was to call it bits.
Yeah.
Um, so it wasn't an actual true redenomination where you're using the same ticker, but same effect.
It's kind of strange. I'm sure we'll go in more detail after we officially jump into the conversation stuff, but it's funny because sats are a big thing these days. Ever since Lightning came around, they really pushed into sats. And one thing that I thought was interesting is there's a sats logo. Like there's an actual logo for
Oh,
Satoshis that's ugly as crap. It's like black. And you know, like the Bitcoin is like the angled B with the two lines. It's like
mm,
three lines with the angle lines through it or something. It's something weird that I wouldn't recognize as being at all even Bitcoin adjacent. But they have a Sats logo, and then a lot of wallets I know, like every Lightning wallet I know, prices everything in Sats, which is a little like goofy because like if I want to pay my phone bill on Bit Refill, which it's not that expensive, it's like you know 300,000 Sats or something like that. It's something. It's pretty it's a big number right now, and so I'm sure
mm,
for something like Duff's or whatever else, it would be something way more if it were to go that direction. But I know that's a different thing. And then, of course, I got someone tipped me 1 million eCash after an interview I did with Amari Sachet, and that's equivalent of one BCHA, one Bitcoin ABC, and it's
mm.
like now it's like 1 million, and then there's a whole lot of that stuff we can go into. We got 4 people watching on YouTube, 9 on Odysee. Hey everyone, good seeing you. Let me just roll the intro graphic, and we'll just roll right on into this. So hey, ladies and gents, happy Friday. Good to see you all. I'm joined by the one and only Rion Gull of the Dash Incubator and many other things. I'm sure. How's it going, man?
Yeah, I almost forgot about that part of me for a minute there.
Yeah.
Getting steeped into this issue is totally different, but yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so I had this idea to chat about this just like a couple days ago, and it's because in the recent times the talk of fiddling with the Dash denominations became a hot topic that I mean people talked about it over the years, but now I there it feels like legs, like to where it could be something that something is. If I were to trust my dashy gut, something's gonna happen. Something concrete is going to happen. I have no idea what, but that's just my feeling. And so as such, I feel like it's great to get ahead of this, talk about it with a bunch of people, get it all out there, and just make sure everything is in as dialed in as it can be before anything actually like hits a proposal or starts getting actually built in a technical sense. And so I'd like to remind everyone, cointr.ee/the desert links is the super chat. You can, if you're watching on Odysee, you can also leave a hyper chat there. And I mean, if you have any questions about the, or statements or bits of information about the issue of changing the denominations of Dash in any way, start throwing them out there now. Sometimes CoinTree takes a little longer to kick in, so it helps to have a little thing. And we don't have a scheduled, like, we're going to talk about these talking points and then open it up for questions after. Questions start now. So start throwing those questions against the wall. We're also going to be monitoring stuff. And yeah, let's just get into it. So, first of all, I'm going to take the role of the boomer, of the old guy of, oh, back in my day, there was only 21 million Bitcoin and everyone loved that. And then Dash was like, it's already funky being like kind of 18 or 19 million, somewhere in there. Like but it's still like similar. It's like we all love that amount. And or Litecoin is 84 million or whatever it was. And like we all like that amount. Why are you trying to change things? Like, can you explain what the base issue is? Like, why are people caring about decimal places or moving things? Why does it matter? What is this all about?
Well, it's a big question, but why it matters, it matters to different people in different ways. So I know that a lot of people have talked about, well, this is just a stunt to increase the market cap, and I hear a lot of comments like, I didn't hear anything about this when the price was rising, stuff like that, like snarky comments like that. But the reality is that we were actually talking about this long before 2017, before the major price rises, increases, and through 2017, after 2017. I mean, I've been talking about this forever. Just, it doesn't matter what the price is. So it matters to some people because of that. I think it might have that effect of, when all is said and done, it might have that effect of it's easier to pump the price up because the nominal price is much lower, and people just psychologically think that, oh, well, it's got to go to $1 at some point. That's one way to think about it. But to me, it's always been about usability. It's always been about being able to price small value things with whole numbers so that it's reasonable. Just like pretty much every other currency on the planet.
Yeah, of course. It's so obviously the Dash amount, the amount of a whole Dash, the purchasing power of a whole Dash as of today, I would say, is probably too big for most things, to where, like, how much did your meal cost? You go out with the meal for the entire family, it's like, I don't know, 0.8 Dash or something at most. Like, it's the integer numbers would be like you're buying a car, you're buying a new computer. Maybe it would be like 1.5, 2 Dash, something like that. There's a few things that still apply to, but it's not like 28 Dash is like, well, it's 28.5 Dash. Like, what costs 28.5 Dash? I don't know. Nothing. That's kind of in pricey territory. And especially if we expect the price to go up at some point, the purchasing power, let's say, of Dash to go up, that'll get a lot dicier.
Which we do.
But here's the thing, like, so let me start throwing some boomer comments and questions. First off, well, everyone prices things in fiat today. No one's using crypto of any kind as a unit of count. Why would you need to do that today at all? Why can't we just use dollars? So I'll just say that thing and go. What do you think?
Yeah, and this is where I wrote a document about this, and the very start of that document, you can find it on my GitHub account. The very start of that document starts with the motivation, and the motivation is that, well, you have to decide what your vision is. What's your vision for Dash? Do you want Dash? Do you actually believe that Dash can be a new monetary system?
Yes.
Like, do you actually believe that? If the answer to that question is yes, you almost certainly have to be for this motion, for a
Mm-hmm.
redenomination. And that's a little bit of a hot take, but I guess the hot take would be, if you are against this, if you are
Mm-hmm.
against a redenomination, it's because you don't actually believe Dash can be money.
Mm.
And the reason for that is, just look around you. How many people are capable of processing um, prices that are in scientific notation or
Yeah.
units, like millidashes and microdashes, and have any kind of concept and know when to make the change to start using millidashes and microdashes? And then you have, merchant X, using millidashes, and merchant Y using microdashes, and
Mm-hmm.
merchant Z using duffs, and merchant, I ran out of letters in the alphabet. Let's go back to
Yeah.
A. They're using dash still.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that's not a good system. And one of the things that people kind of think is that, hey, the market will work this out. Just kind of let's step back. We don't need to do anything here. We just need to let the market work this out. Well, I'm sorry, but this is the market working it out. Actually, the market won't work this out. And I've
Yeah.
given an example of, some things the market does work out, like prices in general, like what the price of an apple should be. That the market works that out. What kind of services the market should offer, the market works that kind of thing out. And that's the thing where an individual, like every individual, can kind of sit back and just rely on the fact that all the other individuals in the market, they're going to make choices that will solve this problem. That's
Mm-hmm.
one type of issue. And then you have a completely different type of issue, which I think of as the rocket ship analogy.
Mm.
Nobody, if every individual in society sits around saying, hey, the market's going to work out how to build a rocket ship. Well, it's true on one level, the market will, but it's only true because certain individuals sat down, they took the time, they made the designs, they had a plan, they executed that plan, and it made it happen. Somebody in society has to actually do the engineering and make the choices and do the work. That's how this will get fixed. If everybody just sits around waiting for, quote unquote, the market to work it out, it will not happen. And that's why Bitcoin hasn't done it. Because we've been sitting around for a decade waiting for Bitcoin to work out that this problem. And you might say, well, they have kind of solved it because now we're using Sats and everything. And well, we're not really. We're not using
Mm-hmm.
Sats. The traders are using Sats, but that's a totally different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dash has a mission of being actual commercial money, meaning we expect and we are planning for and we are working towards the point where whole societies, economies are using Dash on a day-to-day basis. They're transacting goods and services denominated in Dash. That's my vision. It's a big vision,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that should be everybody's vision in Dash. That's what digital cash is. I mean, it's not. We're not trying to build digital PayPal. We're not
Mm-hmm.
trying to build a PayPal or a payment processor that
Yeah.
relies on other units. PayPal is transacting fiat currencies. It's transacting existing currencies. That's not what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're making a new currency. We're transacting our own currency. And so that needs to have marketable prices that are whole units. And
Mm-hmm.
so we need to fix this. It needs to be actually planned, engineered, and executed. And the other, I'm sorry, I'm jumping right into
Yeah.
like all the objections that I keep hearing in
Of
my head
course.
about this.
Nah, that's good.
And
We're
one of
just
those
gonna.
is,
This is. I don't timestamp these things
this is
anyway,
like,
much to the
blah,
chagrin to people. So I don't care. Just throw it all over the place. Watch the whole damn thing if you care about the issue.
right, yeah. So another thing I hear a lot is, well, yeah, that's my vision. My vision is that
Mm-hmm.
Dash could eventually be, digital cash, that we're using it and transactions, blah blah blah. But that's so far down the road. Like first you have to be a medium of exchange, then you have to be a store of value, and then maybe a decade or two down the road, we'll think about being a unit of account, that kind of thinking. And then
Mm-hmm.
we'll fix the problem. Well, the problem with that is if that is your vision sometime down the road that we'll get to that point and that we can get to that point, you need to do the work now. You actually have to
Mm-hmm.
do the work yesterday. Yeah, we had to, if we had done this work 5, 6 years ago, it'd be done by now. We wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
this conversation. But we will keep having this conversation until it's actually fixed, or
Mm-hmm.
until we fall out of into obscurity, and so we're using some other thing. Um, now there, I guess right now I'll give you some chances to bust in here and ask some questions
Yeah,
if
of
you want.
course.
But I could also just go right into what are the options ahead of us, if you want.
Yeah. Well, right before that, let's just talk about because Bitcoin, because everything started with Bitcoin. I mean, everything started with other monies and stuff, but Bitcoin was created. Um, Satoshi arrived at a 21 million number, and this is where my like OG knowledge just I doesn't hold up. I have no idea why I picked 21 million,
He
and
didn't. He didn't pick 21 million.
hmm,
He picked 50.
yeah,
He picked 50 bitcoins per block for block
mm-hmm,
0 and block 1 and blah blah blah. Then it became
mm-hmm,
25 after, and then he picked 4 years. He picked different numbers that ended up with a 21 million.
yeah,
So it was arbitrary regardless. The 21,
yeah.
there's nothing magic about it. But I think what you're getting at is that the magnitude was 21 million and not something like 21 trillion or 21 quadrillion, right?
Yeah. And so like at scale today, if one person owns one unit of this account, one unit is, 50 grand, right? So it's like um an expensive car is 1 Bitcoin. 10 Bitcoin is like depending on where you're at, like an expensive house or a cheap house, but it's a house. 10 Bitcoin's a house. And I don't know what costs more than a house. Like not many things. Now you're getting into baller territory, right? Really. And it's like, what's your net worth? 5 Bitcoin. Like there's a lot of people with that where it's
Mm-hmm.
far below that. And so already the units and Bitcoin is like no one uses it. No one has it compared to the global population, I mean. And that's clearly not going to work. Now, obviously, if there was like 21 billion Bitcoin, that would have been something different, let's just say. But even then, with 6 billion people on the planet, who knows if that's the best? I don't know. But the thing is, what was, I guess, designed is, the base unit at the very bottom is a Satoshi. And then you have, it's just multiples of that all the way up. And so, from my understanding, Bitcoin, like the unit of 1 Bitcoin, is just a whole bunch of Satoshis, and everything in between there, it would just be a naming custom, right?
Yeah, and this is one of those things that he did decide. He did decide to split. He made a couple decisions. There's two different ways to look at it. You can look at it by saying he chose a unit called a Satoshi to be the basic unit,
Mm-hmm.
and then he created Bitcoins or BTC, what it was later named,
Mm-hmm.
but he made his wallet default to 100 million of those little things is one of the
Mm-hmm.
units that we'll call the main thing that we're kind of
Mm-hmm.
promoting. So the other way to look at that is to say he created the thing that he wanted to promote and he called it Bitcoins or BTC
Mm-hmm.
and divided that and made that divisible by 100 million pieces. Saying the same thing, but either way, there's this one unit that's fundamental, that's
Mm-hmm.
actually protocol level fundamental unit, and then there's this other unit that's cosmetic, that's a collection of those units,
Mm-hmm.
100 million of those units we just call this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that's kind of how it works. And there are details that I'm kind of just smoothing over there,
Yeah.
but that's basically what it is there's a main default unit that's not divisible, and then there's another unit that's at the surface that people interact with and that people use and that people started pricing things in. That's a collection of them.
Yeah, but so at its root, like, and we're going technical now, right? Not just like in terms of like what's useful as a money and stuff, but like on a technical level, the Satoshi, or the Duff in Dash's case, is basically the root of everything. Now, on a technical level, what makes a dash a dash? Like, in terms of like the actual code base, what makes the integer of a dash? What makes it that and not just, what is it, five, like a billion or however many it is,
Yeah.
Duffs?
This would be a better question for one of the developers, like Post or
Yes.
something. It would be good to have him on something like that.
Yes, and if you're a Dash developer
Because,
and you're listening right now, throw out into any of the chats what the answer to
yeah,
this, and then we'll go with that. But in the meantime, yeah.
my knowledge of this though is that there is, it's not nothing. Like there are a lot of things that are built around this collection of 100 million of satoshis.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as there's the Bitcoin thing, and then it's divisible by 100 million. In other words, it's a floating point
Yeah.
thing. But in a lot of programming, you don't want to deal with you don't want to deal with floating point numbers. In other words, numbers with decimals. So in most programming, you make it into an integer anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
if there's this thing called a dash, or a beat or a Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
and you're making it divisible, well, you're going to represent that in your code as an integer anyway. And so that's, again, I'm a little bit at the limits of my knowledge with how it's working under the hood with the C++ code. But just in general programming terms, you almost never want to deal with um, floating point numbers, especially in financial applications, because floating point arithmetic doesn't always add up. And so you create
Mm-hmm.
them into integers anyway.
Yeah.
So there probably is some software. There's probably a lot of software that does use dashes and BTCs, bitcoins,
Mm-hmm.
um, and makes them floating points. There's probably some of that software out there.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is a technical question. All I know is that there is a way to solve this, because software
Mm-hmm.
is always changeable. It's
Mm-hmm.
always customizable. You can always make hard forks and things like that. The only question is, how much work is it, and
Mm-hmm.
what is the cost in terms of the effort to make this thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a cost benefit analysis like
Of
anything
course.
else. There are certain benefits that I hope to be able to express well today,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are certain costs, and both of those are kind of unknown right now. And it takes a lot of thought and kind of research to know, to quantify those costs and benefits. But what I don't accept as an answer is like, oh, it's too hard. There's no way to do it. There's always a
Yeah.
way to do it. It just depends on the cost benefit. So
Yeah. So people like these smaller, more manageable things, and I did some cursory Wikipedia research years ago on when this came up, and I've forgotten most of that since then. But uh, everything in the modern currencies I'm aware of all is in denominations, multiples of 100, right? You get a dollar, which is 100 cents in, which cent means like a hundredth in US dollars, for example. You got like same thing in British pounds, same thing in euros, same thing in pesos. Most pesos, at least. I don't know all of them, but every money I know of is a hundredth multiple today. Now,
mm,
I have heard that there historically have been successful popular currencies that used thousandth multiples. And I don't really have that research in front of me right now, but I know there were some. And in fact, I know a mill is a historical term for a thousandth of a, I forget what, but people
Yeah,
did used to do the
just a thousandth. Yeah.
people used to do that in the past. Um, what do you know on that subject? And do you think is this should be a there should be a hundredth denomination kind of thing, or do you think it should be a thousandth, or is there something like a 20th that it should be or something? Like, who knows? Because obviously nickels,
Okay.
dimes, and quarters in terms of coins, yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. But
Let's go down a
what are your
little.
thoughts
Let's go
on
down a
that?
little rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
Um, the uh, the economically literate people, especially in the MMT camp, might disagree with me here, but
Mm-hmm.
the word dollar. Okay, so let's go back to the origin of money. Again, there are different stories about the origin of
Mm-hmm.
money, state theory of money, blah blah blah. The theory that I subscribe to is that money emerged as a medium of exchange, because it was the most marketable medium of exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Gold and silver. Let's look at gold. Okay, so gold. How do you measure gold? You
Mm-hmm.
measure it in weight. That's the easiest way, right?
Yeah, of
Because
course.
it can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So people were measuring gold, blah blah blah. Their money was defined by its weight,
Mm-hmm.
and there's if I'm remembering this correctly, 1 ounce of silver back in the Bohemian country land. There was a count that kind of commissioned some money to be made, and he called them thalers because they were
Mm-hmm.
Tal is a word in German, in Germanic languages, that means valley. So like the
Mm-hmm.
thaler was a 1 ounce coin that was made in the valley, down there in the
Mm-hmm.
valley. This is a
The Valley
thaler,
Bucks.
a valley buck. Yeah. And it was 1 ounce. And so that's where we get the word dollar. It comes
Mm-hmm.
from a 1 ounce coin. So once you have that thing that's just standardized, we're just going to call it we're just going to call it a thing. And the name dollar stuck. Okay. So that's where we get that term. You
Mm-hmm.
can divide that into however many you want to. So again, historically, because gold and silver are fixed quantity for the most part, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
fixed, but it's very hard to
It's
get new
limited.
quantities into circulation.
Mm-hmm.
And so with an economy that's producing more and more goods, compared against a limited supply currency, you get deflation, meaning price
Mm-hmm.
deflation, meaning the prices of things start going down.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have to start dividing in the first place. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of going down this rabbit hole so that
Of
we have the
course.
whole context of like why we have divisions anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you kept that deflationary asset, I shouldn't use the term deflationary asset because it's not quite
Mm-hmm.
accurate. But if you have an asset that's money and it becomes more and more useful and people are using it more and the economy is
Mm-hmm.
growing and growing, prices are going to be decreasing and decreasing over
Mm-hmm.
time because of technological improvements and things like that. So you will expect to have to divide more and more and more and more, and that's what Dash has seen. That's what cryptocurrencies have seen, is that their prices are going up, and therefore prices for things denominated in those currencies are going to go down and down and down. And so you have this issue. This is an issue this redenomination issue is unique to currencies that get more and more valuable. With national currencies, it's the opposite, because of inflation. People end up having to chop zeros off of the prices instead of
Mm-hmm.
chopping zeros off of the other side of the decimal. So I'm probably too deep into this rabbit hole right now, and we should probably get back on topic, I guess. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but basically
there's
the
no ideal. It's just to answer your question, whatever the market needs is what's going to happen. So
mm-hmm.
if you have a currency that's limited in supply, there isn't an ideal amount of divisions to make. It's just what do we need, and if we need to be using, people will want to use whole numbers because psychologically, mentally, it's just easier to use whole numbers. So people are going to
Mm-hmm.
kind of devise things, ways to make prices in whole numbers anyway. So it's just a matter of like, can we standardize this, and can we get out ahead of it and design it in a way that the community can get behind in an
Mm-hmm.
easier way, so that we don't have to place a bunch of burden on our users. Let's take that burden onto ourselves, go through the the hard work of designing the thing, so that the users don't have to go through those difficult times.
Mm-hmm. Well, so now we talk about like more specific amounts. So first off, like as I mentioned, the Satoshi right now, because at some point I believe all like the Lightning wallets for Bitcoin and even some other things have started to use the Satoshi as as the unit of account, the very smallest Bitcoin number, and Bitcoin being so much more valuable than a single Bitcoin than a single Dash today, but still far from mass adoption. But right now, um, if I were to pay like my phone bill or something, it would be like several like hundreds of thousands of Satoshis, which gets a little bit too big. But then
Mhm.
you want to, but then if it's like 0.8 for your, okay, well maybe that 0.2 for your lunch. Okay, that starts to get a little like you want to be using integers, just not too many. So
Right. You want to be in that sweet spot where you're using integers, but you're not using like millions and billions and trillions of
yes.
units. And that's why
Unless you're talking about
fiat
like real money,
currencies.
unless you're talking about a baller, right?
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
governments actually have an easier time of this than cryptocurrencies, because governments, if prices are getting too low, they just print more money, and they feel justified in that. So governments, if they were good governments, they could keep prices at a level, at a magnitude that their users are comfortable with all the time. It's just when governments kind of get out of hand,
Mm-hmm.
and they get out, it gets out of control, and then they end up with millions and billions and trillions of units, and so they have to do these redenominations because
Mm-hmm.
they were inflating too much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like we have the opposite problem. But the difference is, we can most likely just do this once, and we won't have to do it again if we choose the right magnitude to scale it to. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit of a design question that is further down the road maybe than the decision of whether we're going to do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's a design question that's later down the road, but it's good to start thinking about it, because we don't want to have to do this and then do it again and then do it again. We want to do it
Yeah,
ideally just once.
once and done. Now we're talking
Yep.
about denominations. So right now with Dash, it's predominantly the Dash, the one denomination, and then somewhere down the way is Duffs, but like no one's dealt with Duffs. Bitcoin is kind of the same way, although the Satoshi is much more relevant to the Bitcoin world than the Duff is to the Dash world, where there's two units. There's the Bitcoin, which is like how many houses can you buy? And then there's the Duff, which is, the Satoshi, which is like a giant pile. And it's a small, like literally the base denomination, like the smallest, and then the largest. So there's two units basically. Now, as you mentioned, I don't remember if it was off air or on air about the bit that at some point I believe it was Jimmy Song tried to introduce the bit as was it 100 satoshis or something like that. It was like
Yes.
a more realistic denomination. And I do remember for a brief period of time before Bitcoin became unusable as a payment system, and then they tried to more recently reboot it with Lightning. Uh, People started to price things in bits, and it was a little confusing. I tried to use it a little bit, and then I just wasn't using it at all because no one did that. So with a bit, you'd have like with the bit system, let's just say you have like the Big Daddy Bitcoin, and then you have like bits, and then Sats or Satoshis are the very smallest kind of thing. So at that point, you have 3 units. Now, what do you think Dash should have? Do you think how many units? Like obviously right now there's practically one, but really two. There's like the dash, and then there's the duff at the other end. And like, how many like units should there be for the brain to kind of like wrap its head around it as just one?
Yeah. Yeah. You just want one. You don't want to have to think about anything more than one. You want
Okay.
one well designed unit. And anything else is just a reference, a different magnitude referencing that unit.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, that's what we have already. So like with Dash and with Bitcoin, so, with Satoshis, it's a little bit different because they have this. The traders have this need to kind of have the whole numbers pricing other altcoins and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and by the way, like there's nothing in Dash's code base that I even uses the word duff. I don't think it's just something that the community has kind of called the base unit of of Dash
And apparently,
because
the
he's the
old Venezuelan
creator.
Petro has Duff in their white paper as well, or
And
their code
similarly,
somewhere.
I
Yeah.
don't think that there's anything calling the smallest unit of Bitcoin a Satoshi either. But if there is, I seem to actually remember looking in the code base. Dash uses Satoshis a lot as well in our
Hmm.
code. We use
Very
the term
strange.
Satoshi. Um, it's just because we're forked from Bitcoin. Like, why wouldn't we, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's just not something that's surfaced. So it doesn't matter. This is really a marketing thing.
Yeah.
It's what we want to market, and and like we could go down the road of just like, hey, let's just go all the way to the base unit. Let's give it a name. You know, giving it the name Duff is an option. It's just not an option that I would want. I
Mm-hmm.
would get behind, and most other people just because of its reference to Simpson Duff beer and whatnot and all that. But we could call it Satoshi also. Just like you have U.S. dollars, you have New Zealand dollars, you have Australian dollars, you have Canadian dollars. They're all calling their thing a dollar, even though they're totally different currencies. And there are historical reasons why they were called the same thing. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality now is that they are different things, totally different things, but they're still
Yeah.
called the same thing. So we could, if we really wanted to, we could call our base unit Satoshis as well,
Mm-hmm.
because, we're just following Satoshi's vision even better than Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
But
Following fucking
regardless,
dash
it's just a
sats.
question of what does the community want to get behind and what do we want to
Yeah.
market. So I went down this kind of thought process in my head a long time ago, and I said, well, what would we if we wanted to start using a magnitude of the currency that was easier to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
what would we call that unit? And there are different options. Again, like I said, there even DCG kind of threw around the idea of naming something smaller than the dash a dot. And then that's not a viable option anymore because we have Polkadot,
Oh
which,
yeah.
by the
They.
way, did a redenomination of their coin. Um, but I think the easiest thing, as far as like, if you take away all the work involved in implementation and designing, and if you could just snap your fingers and get right to the solution that you wanted to, the least controversial option would be, hey, I just want to use the term dash, just like we
Yeah.
always have been, but have it be a different, represent a different magnitude of value. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I came up with the idea of the, or not, I didn't come up with it. I wasn't the first one, I don't think. I'm just the one that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of promoted it the most, of this redenomination. Let's just redefine what a dash is,
Mm-hmm.
from being 100 million uh, base units, whatever you
Yes.
want to call those, to now being 100 base units. So you're changing it by a factor of 1 million,
Mm-hmm.
and you're keeping the same name. Now,
Mm-hmm.
again, forget about the implementation for now.
Yeah.
If you
Just the
could get to
conceptual
that
thing.
point, if you could get to that point, you're using, now you have a different, you're using, everybody's using the term dash for the unit.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100 duffs, it's 100 base units. And so everything imaginable right now that you could think of even transacting for would be a
Mm-hmm.
whole number, the
Yeah.
price of that thing. So that would be great, right? So the only
Mm-hmm.
question is, how do we get there? And so that's where we come into those options, right? There's
Well,
different
we're
options.
starting to get some super chats piling up. The second one of these is one that I liked to that I was actually gonna like introduce on. It's very relevant to this. But first off, one time, thanks one time. Someone suggested going straight to. Wait, no, that was the next one. First, hi Joel and Ryan. Do you think it's actually feasible to redenominate Dash without anyone in the world losing funds? Uh, Without Dash being delisted from exchanges or apps?
Without anyone losing funds, I think is probably doable and easier than maybe the exchange without losing exchanges. I don't know. Like if we do the redenomination in either of the two options that,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm not going to say that I'm for any one of these more than any of the other ones at this point. We
Yes.
still have a lot to discuss, but I think that there are risks to each one of them, and I just think
Mm-hmm.
that if we kind of constrain ourselves and say nobody is allowed to lose a single duff, nobody, not a single exchange is. We're not allowed
Yeah.
to compromise one single exchange. If we constrain ourselves like that, we wouldn't do anything probably.
Of
We
course.
wouldn't release a wallet for that matter, because
Mm-hmm.
once you release a wallet, there's a potential that somebody could get some money in that wallet and then lose it. Like obviously there's some risks. It's the same issue
Mm-hmm.
with privacy. I'm in the camp where I just say, hey, we're not necessarily a privacy coin, but we will always recognize the um, the right and the we will always promote privacy regardless of whether the exchanges delist us or not. I know
Mm-hmm.
there are other people in different camps there, and it is a balance that you should
Yeah.
try to strike. But this just like that is a balance. I think the wrong answer is to do, to have the complete, oh, safety rules all mentality, and we can't afford to lose a single exchange and lose, a single user that loses some funds.
Mm-hmm.
That's the wrong approach. And just the shooting from the hip and not caring about anything is also the wrong approach. It needs to be something in the middle, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where you have the best value anyway.
Yeah. Well, let me get to this second one that we got so far. Let me actually see if we can pop this one out. Someone suggested going straight to Duff's so we wouldn't need to do it again. Thoughts on that? Now, before we go to the thoughts on straight to Duff's, I want to address the second part. So we wouldn't need to do it again. Now, as I mentioned, the sats, how many sats my phone bill costs.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, like I remember a time when I was paid my first income directly in Dash was I got paid like about 3 Dash per article to write something. And so like one of those, like half a Dash would be a coffee. 2 Dash, like a whole Dash could be like a sandwich or something. Like, it was a very workable denomination at that point. And then what happened, of course, is the price went way up. And then when you get to like 1600 USD at the end of 2017, that's like that's not a workable thing anymore. And then now it's a little bit down there. I know, obviously, for the incubator and the marketing hub, we price things directly in Dash, and the amounts are semi workable. Half a Dash for this, 1 Dash for that, 1.5. Like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
If Dash becomes successful, this will change radically. And it's not just, oh, it'll be much higher, so we have to think bigger. There is a lot of from here to there. And there's a lot of, let's just say we went straight to the Duff and called that a Dash, right? 21, yeah, whatever you call it, like
Mm-hmm.
211 trillion or whatever, however
It's
many.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would be 1.9 quadrillion.
Yes. So it'd be like 1.9 quadrillion Dash. You call the Duff the Dash now.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, before it takes off, assuming Dash takes off and becomes like a world currency that a lot of people use and stuff like that. In the interim, you have an extremely unworkable denomination, which could lead to people not being able to use it very well in the meantime, which could keep it from getting there. And then let's just say we do the eCash thing, which because we'll bring up the specific thing, and just do the 100 duffs is now called a dash, and that also, you know, is highly unworkable for a certain. Again, I'm making assumptions here. I'm not taking positions. I'm just saying there's a moving target of when at what purchasing power point is this denomination going to be the exact right choice? Is it going to be the best consumer experience? Which is why, countries, when it becomes unworkable in their crappy fiat, they cut off zeros and such. So when you're trying to find the one perfect denomination, uh, is there a way to actually do that, or without making a highly imperfect denomination for a period of time?
Yeah, no, there's not a perfect solution, and even if you did find a perfect solution,
Mm-hmm.
it would not become it would become not perfect sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Um, but so I like to my reference point is I might have to pull my calculator out here for a second
That's
here, but
fine.
my reference point is like the least the least value that I ever see myself wanting to transact in a single transaction
Mm-hmm.
and like go through the trouble of doing a transaction is probably 1 cent. It's probably
Mm-hmm.
less. It's probably a little bit more than that. Like I wouldn't want to bother if the user experience was super slick. It was just a click of a button. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
1 cent is probably a good baseline. Now,
Yeah.
if you want to that 1 cent, and I'm talking about 1 cent of US dollar value. So just
Mm-hmm.
think of it as like you see you're online and somebody writes a good post or a good comment, and you want to just click a button and tip them 1 penny.
Yeah.
What what would you want that thing to be called? If you're now forget about the dollars. Just
Mm-hmm.
think about the value of a comment, and you want a value on that that's not the US dollar. Would you want that thing to be called 0.000005, or would you want that thing to be called 50? You'd want that thing to be called 50, both as the person giving it and as the person
Mm-hmm.
receiving it. It's just easier, right? So if you do that right now, 1 cent, if you one divided by or no, 0.01, that's
Mm-hmm.
1 cent, divided by, let's just call the price of Dash 200.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is that point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros and then a five.
Yeah.
Now, if you multiply that by 1 million, that's 50.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what you have to multiply to get that point. To
Mm-hmm.
like if you multiplied it by 1,000, you'd still be in fractional units. You'd still be in less than whole units. You have to multiply that by 1 million to get whole numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now once you're there, if and that's why I use this as my baseline. The
Mm-hmm. Okay.
baseline thing to for me is a 1 million to one redenomination, exactly like eCash did.
Mm-hmm.
They did it brilliantly. It's exactly right for reasons, and this is my preference, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I would go for is 1,000 to one. Anything
Okay.
other than that is like, why are we considering this? Why are we considering a 10 to 1 redenomination? We'll
Yeah. I
definitely
mean,
be
that's
having to do
obviously
that
silly.
again. What about 100? Well, yeah, that might buy us some time. Like right now, if we did 100 to 1, instead of dash being one dash being 170 or whatever it is now, it would be 1.7.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we do another 10x, and now we're back to that's not good enough either. 1,000 to one is better. Plus, it's
Mm-hmm.
easier to work in thousands. We think in thousands. We think thousand, million, billion, trillion. These are
Yeah.
multiples of 1,000. So to me, the
Okay.
only viable options are 1,000 and 1,000,000. 1
Mm-hmm.
billion is too much. It's not necessary. 1,000 is good for now, but it's not good if you're planning into the future for future price increases. 1,000,000 just gets you right where you want to be, so that something that costs or is the value of what you would think of as 1 cent, 1 US dollar cent
Mm-hmm.
today, gets a value of 50 units. That's something that you can really like to use. Now, for the things that are more expensive, it's still easy to use those because we're very good as humans at using the terms thousands, millions, billions, trillions. We're not nearly as good as with using and comprehending and doing math with
For
things in
hundreds.
the thousandths and
Yeah.
millionths. It's even hard to say because you have to put that th on the end.
Yes.
Um, and so that's why scientific notation, you don't do that th
Mm-hmm.
thing at the end. You just give it a different name. And I'm an
Mm-hmm.
engineer, so I'm comfortable with this stuff. This is not that I'm not comfortable with this stuff. It's because I know that other people aren't comfortable with it. So anyway, that's my preference, is a 1,000,000 to 1 magnitude. But that's just one decision out of several decisions that would need to be made.
Yeah. It's so when we hit this, let's just say the times million, the eCash way. Shout out to
Mhm.
Amari. We do that like then the
Oh, and
lowest
just
pos.
just one thing
Yes.
before I forget that. The other nice benefit of the 1,000,000 to 1 is that you end up with 100 subunits, just like every other thing on the planet, just like every other currency on the planet.
Yeah.
100 subunits for that unit,
Mm-hmm.
because because the native unit is divisible by 8 decimal places, which is 100 million,
Mm-hmm.
and so it works. 100 million divided by 1,000,000 is 100.
Yeah. So let's just say in the very smallest unit, we're talking about like the name of a duff being kind of folksy and unprofessional. But so is like a penny, but like that's because we don't use pennies, we use the dollar or the pound or something that sounds a little bit better.
Yep.
But so let's just say the dash is a millionth, like a times million, and 100 duffs is a dash, and that's all right. Now, when we get to insane price points, obviously that becomes very feasible. In the interim, so let's just assume the what we call a dash now it becomes a million dash, and then we have duffs. But then the next thousandth above that, maybe we colloquially call that like a kilodash or whatever. But it doesn't matter as much because the the dash is the 100 duffs is like the namesake. And then let's just say we might have to work in like 30K dash for a meal or something for a while, and then because 30K for kilodash or for 30,000 dash or whatever, and then we get to you know then that kind of works out. But the anchor of the word dash is put to that. Um, so let me just go over all this. Well, just make sure I didn't miss any of these super chats. But one thing I think is interesting. So once we got that whole thing figured out, um, let's talk like wallet display stuff, right? Because when we're talking about the Bitcoin, this is like one of the approaches to achieving this thing is, well, it's all the same. It's all multiples of duffs. So why don't we just have wallets price things in something that's like much smaller and call that a dash? Just start calling it differently. Like all you do is just change the naming system, right? Uh,
Mhm.
just have wallets do things differently, and just like Bitcoin wallets with Sats. Like,
Right, right, right,
what do
right.
you think are the pros and cons of that approach?
That will never catch on.
Okay, why do you think
So
it'll never catch on?
Dash Core Group could do this, right? They would be the
Mm-hmm.
best ones to do this. At the best case scenario, Dash Core Group takes this on. They say, hey, we're going to start putting the default unit as, something like the whatever we call it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to Actually, one option that I kind of like is just calling it a dollar, a dash dollar, right?
Mm.
Let's say let's say that DCG gets on board with that idea and they say, "Hey, that thing that's 100 duffs, we're going to call that a dash dollar, and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
make that the default unit in the wallet, so that when you upgrade and you like if you had one dash in your wallet before the upgrade, after the upgrade you're going to have 1 million dash dollars."
Mm-hmm.
Let's say DCG did that. Okay, that's going to be confusing, right?
Yeah.
Because Exodus, they didn't get a memo. They didn't get a
Mm-hmm.
memo about that.
Yeah.
And Paul,
Mm-hmm.
Paul didn't get a memo about that for what's his wallet called again?
Edge.
Drawing a blank. Edge.
Mm-hmm.
All the different wallets. Okay, you're going to have to send out the memos to all those guys. And let's say every single wallet and every single, even the price charts, every
Mm-hmm.
analytics company, they get on board. They all got the memo, except for the exchanges. Well, now the exchanges, if the exchange, the point of this is if the
Yes.
exchanges aren't on board, it doesn't get traction.
Mm-hmm.
Value and the price of things starts at exchanges. So if the exchanges aren't on board, nobody's going to be on board. So yeah, you have to get the exchanges on board, and that's what this whole thing is. We probably should have started with something like this at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
to say, what are we even talking about? What we're
Yeah.
talking about is, well, at least in two of the three options, we're talking about getting the exchanges on board and saying, hey, we would like you to start using a different default unit when you're selling Dash for
Mm-hmm.
fiat, or when people are buying Dash with fiat. We want you to sell in this magnitude
Mm-hmm.
instead of the Dash. And then once if that happens, like that's just going to filter out throughout the whole economy and the whole ecosystem. Everybody else will start using that because that's the reference point. Coin market cap will start listing the prices where they got it on the exchanges, and
Mm-hmm.
CoinGecko and all the analytics firms. They'll be like, okay, the exchanges are using this. That's what we're going to use too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it doesn't work if you just do it in the wallet. Especially doesn't work if you give the option to the user. They're just going to use the default. But yeah, you got to start with the exchanges.
So, I guess the standard bearer of this has been eCash lately, as we mentioned a couple different times. They did like the times million thing. I noticed some exchanges or some like price aggregators or whatever still display the old BCHA units, and obviously they did a complete rebrand, so they're not BCHA, they're XEC. They're not Bitcoin Cash ABC, they're eCash and
Mm-hmm.
XEC, and not everyone switched over to that. But they did a hard fork, right? They did like a protocol level change to now everything is denominated in those millions rather than whatever. And of course, the technical bits, this is where I would love to talk with some core developers about this to see exactly what's under the hood, what are in the guts of that. And
Yeah, I
but the
haven't
big
looked at it,
so the big thing, let's
but
just talk about cons, right? We're talking about pros
well,
and
just
cons.
one
Okay.
real quick thing on that. You probably could look up um, the
Mm-hmm.
Git commit and see exactly what had to happen for them to redenominate from BCHA to
Mm-hmm.
eCash and do that redenomination in the code,
Mm-hmm.
because it came from Bitcoin. They're forked from Bitcoin just like we're forked from Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So as far as the core
Copy.
wallet's concerned, we can look at that and see what they had to do. That's not the majority of the work with this. The majority of the work, and we would have more work than eCash. eCash had it easy because they rebranded everything, right? They went
Mm-hmm.
from BCHA, Bitcoin Cash ABC, to eCash. So they
Mm-hmm.
took on a new ticker symbol. So they just had to coordinate the most of the work. If you talk to Omri or whatever, I would guess that he would say most of the work was all the conversations we had to have with all the exchanges. It wasn't the coding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's, for sure. And especially as something that wasn't even supported by all these exchanges. That's the thing. Uh, Dash obviously has more to lose, but also more connections here. Let me
We
hit a
don't
couple.
actually. Unfortunately, we have less to lose than eCash. They're above
Yeah.
us in market cap. If that's what you want to use as your metric
Well,
for
that's an interesting thing to hit on for
what to
the pros
lose.
and cons. Let me hit it. There's a couple of valuable, what are they? Valuable comments I saw here. First off, random 483 whatever the hell long name says, "Good job, Ryan. Satoshi Nakamoto in private emails to Hal Finney proposed a similar solution to Bitcoin appreciation." I did not know that. I'm not a old school like know everything Satoshi said kind of a guy, but that's kind of interesting. Um, and First Light on Odysee says, "Who's a self-avowed boomer," which is it's good to have the boomer kind in here. Says, I would posit it like this: what value does Dash need to be to provide financial and food security for life to the world population? Once you know that value, you can sort out the units and subunits.
Okay,
Ooh,
I've kind of done that actually,
okay.
just so you know.
All right,
Um,
go for it. This is
I
the
haven't
chance.
done it to that level, but what I did as a proxy for that kind of an analysis is I said, what is the
Mm-hmm.
actual currency supply of the United States dollar? So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, we might not take over the whole world, but if we took over something not close to that or close to that, which was the United
Mm-hmm.
States dollar economy, then that's a pretty good, if we get beyond that, then we got some great problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the currency supply of the United States dollar, there are different currency supplies, right? There's
Yeah.
M0, there's base money, there's M0, there's M1, there's M2, there's MZ, zero maturity. There's all sorts of different metrics for the monetary base. Actually, the best guys, if you want to do some research on that, the best resource that you can find
Mm-hmm.
anywhere that I've found is the hosts of the Crypto Voices podcast. And I don't know, I can't remember
Mm.
their website, but they're obsessed with this stuff. And so but long story short, M1 is about 20 trillion units, and M2 is pretty close to that now, actually, after the craziness of 2020.
Yes.
Um, they're both pretty close to 20 trillion units. M2 is obviously a little bit higher than M1 because it includes more things in
Mm-hmm.
the definition of the money supply. But 20 trillion units, very coincidentally, happens to be exactly what a 1 million to 1 currency redenomination would give us. We would have that would yield 20 or 19 trillion um, new units, um, and if you that would also equal, you multiply that by 100 to get the satoshis, but the main unit that you're trying to go for, that you're marketing, that everything's priced in, that's 20 trillion. So that's just another confirmation. That's why I'm so set on the million to one being the right number. It's the right number for many different reasons. It's the right number because it yields whole numbers for very small value things. It gives you 100 base units, and it also happens to be very close to the number of currency units in the United States economy.
Well, let me hit on another comment in here that was just, I don't think there needs to be much discussion on it, but the BSV wallet hand cash, they decided to call their 500 Satoshi amount a Duro. And so I've heard a lot of BSV pilots talk, oh, so many Duros or whatever. But that's just an anecdotal, like wallet naming kind of a thing on there. We're talking about the cons of such a thing because right now we're talking about money needs to be all this. The way Dash is today is a con, right? And the way we're trying to make this a pro. But let's just talk about the cons of redenomination. I'm going to be
Yeah,
throwing the FUD your way pretty hard right now. So,
great.
first thing is uh, it's going to screw everything up on a technical sense. Where, oh, if you change this, first off, it's a hard fork. I mean, but the thing is, that's not as big of a problem because Dash just hard forks periodically, which is always a mess, but whatever. So you hard fork, everyone has to update their stuff, and then all of a sudden, like, all these people who didn't get the memo because it's a decentralized thing, it's not a centralized company. Even with a centralized company that sends an email to every user, and repeatedly, people are still going to be confused, right? And
Mhm.
they're just all of a sudden they have like they had like 4 Dash in their wallet, and now they have like 4 million Dash. They're like, oh, geez, what the hell is this? They start to freak out, or then someone's just like, man, all I want to do is buy like a Dash a day or a Dash a month. And then they go to their exchange and buy a Dash. It's this little crappy little piece, and they're like, "What the hell?" And then, or they pay 200 USD. Let's just say 200 USD for one new Dash, right? One Dash, and so and so they really get screwed out of things, and then the exchange, like, a lot of exchanges might be like sketchy or not responsive or whatever, and then people just, there's havoc on all that. This would be terrible for Dash from just a pure havoc perspective. All right, FUD number one. What do you think of that?
Um, this is not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
At least there might be some edge cases that we need to explore.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, this is not going to happen because you're not changing the fundamental units. You're just changing some cosmetics.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that's set up to be, automatic or whatever, if you're sending one dash regularly or for whatever reason, we don't even have auto pay, but if you're just used to that or whatever, your
Mm-hmm.
software, you get it, you have some script that does this. Um, what you're really doing is you're sending one, instead of one dash, you're really sending 100 million base units.
Mm-hmm.
And when you, after this name change on the cosmetic surface, you're still going to be sending 100 million base units. All that's
Mm-hmm.
changed is what we're displaying. Um, so it's just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like the incubator and the hub are gonna have to reprice all their tasks, but I mean, that's a very small thing. But I'm sure a lot of places that do prices in this stuff, like a lot of people will have to update a lot of things, and I mean, I guess that's what a hard fork is, right? Where you have to update
Yeah.
things.
This might be a good time to talk about the alternatives that we're looking at, because it's
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to talk about this without referencing the different
Mm-hmm.
the different options of how to achieve this. I put them in three different categories. So the first option is what we've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about the most. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the redenomination. It's changing the name of the name Dash to, instead of representing 100 million base unit duffs, it's representing 100 million or 100 of those. That's changing the name. We would still be using the name Dash for a main unit,
Mm-hmm.
but it would mean something different now. So that's
Okay.
option one. Option two is a little crazy. It's what I think of as so that first thing is what I call redefining the dash. The second
Dash
option is what I'm
redefined.
yeah,
Yeah.
not the economy, not the project, just the unit that we're calling uppercase
Yeah.
DASH, just like in
Call it
USD
build
uppercase.
Dash better if you want to trigger some people.
Mhm. So that's the redefine dash option. The second option is what I'm calling the mint new dash.
Mm.
This is an idea that's kind of championed by, or at least proposed by, XKCD, and it's what I consider to be the highest risk, but also potentially highest reward option. Because instead of doing what I've been talking about this whole time, instead, you're actually minting new dash. You're creating a
Mm-hmm.
bunch more dash, and literally literally inflating your way by creating a ton of new dash. That's going to cause market pressure on the price of dash, so that the price of dash just falls down. by an order of magnitude, by 3. If you did it by 1,000, you'd expect
Yeah.
the dash price to be
It
there
sounds
today.
like XKCD wants to dump. He just like print a bunch, sell it all, dump the price back to where it should be, but he made out like a bandit. But that's just a
Well,
side comment.
I've talked with him about this, and it's
Mm-hmm.
actually it's not as crazy as you might think. It is crazy,
Yeah.
um, but it's not as crazy as you think initially. Once you think it through, you would realize it would be actually a little bit smoother of a ride than you probably initially think.
From a technical
Just
perspective.
because there would be different people wanting to sell at different times, not just right at some specific cutoff. It wouldn't necessarily be
Mm-hmm.
a race as you might initially think. Oh, like because the idea is basically saying I have one dash in my wallet, and
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna create some software tweaks. We're gonna issue a new software. It's gonna be a hard fork, and this is going to have basically like a new command that you can run over the RPC that says,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, I have this one dash." Um, and there would be a snapshot, and the snapshot would basically say, this is the point at which we're going to consider all the UTXO set.
Mm-hmm.
And after that point, sometime later in the future, you would have another point where you would be able to redeem uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, like that one dash in your wallet. You'd be able to redeem that for 999 or 1,000 new dash. So you get 1,000 or 1,001 new dash in your wallet. These are the exact same as the old dash. You just have a ton more of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what are you going to do once you do that? Once you're able to, once you get all those dash in your wallet, let's say that you're the
Mm-hmm.
first person that gets those new dash in your wallet. Well,
Yeah.
those dash are at a market price. You just got 1,000x of the things that are currently worth $170. What are you
Mm-hmm.
going to do? You're going to sell some of those, right? But then you might, but the reality is that a lot of people would probably start selling before that point, and
Yeah.
so it would be a little bit more of a smooth transition than you might initially think. But that's the idea, is to mint um, new dash. And so the benefit of that is that you don't even have to call up the exchanges, let alone get permission from them to do this. You
Mm-hmm.
just say, this is what we're doing. The new version of Dash has this change in it, and it activates at this block. And then there's a snapshot at this block, and then you can redeem at this later block. Um, and we let the market work out what the price will be, and it will almost certainly be much much lower. That's the whole point, is that you're basically hyperinflating the currency.
Mm.
And that's not mischaracterizing it. That's what you're doing it
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
purpose to get the price down. But in a perfect world, like if you did it, you could, you don't care, right? You don't care if you have one unit worth $200 or 1,000 units worth $2 or
Mm-hmm.
$0.2, right? You don't care. The value, all you care about is the total value of your portfolio, or of your
Yeah.
just of your dash assets. So as a user, you don't really care that the
Mm-hmm.
price has lowered, because the quantity of those things that you have has increased dramatically. But the thing is, we don't know, under that method, under that strategy, we don't know what the price would land at. There's no economic model, there's no economic theory that says it's going
Mm-hmm.
to land at exactly 1,000th of the price when you if you print 1,000x and give it to people. You don't know that. It could
Yeah.
You could end up better off. Like we could 1,000x our supply, but only 1/500th the price, and that would result in a doubling of the market cap. That could happen. It's possible, and that's why
Yeah.
this is, potentially, um, has a high risk, but it could also be quite rewarding. It could be more than double. We could triple our market cap by doing this, but we could also be lower than our current market cap by doing
Yeah,
this.
because let's just say you have one dash, just for simplicity. Let's just for simplicity say it's up at 200, and then now you got a million dash that are up at 200 for just a second, and the price is quickly falling right down to, and then you're dumping it because I could sell these at much higher than I could sell my entire dash portfolio for much higher than I could have yesterday. And
Well,
so
the
then,
first trader can at least.
yes,
At least one person's gonna come out running, like a bandit on this. Like,
yes, and I'm probably
and it would
sure,
probably be more than one person, but definitely like the whales that are sophisticated and have
yeah,
very high frequency, like low latency to the exchanges, all that kind of stuff. Like it, right?
yeah. So
Not a
when,
lot of people would see. XKCD thinks that the price would adjust pretty quickly. I think it would be a little bit slower and start a little
yeah,
earlier than he does.
there'd be arbitrage
But
opportunities too, and like,
regardless, I mean, once you get 1,000x or 1,000,000x of your coin supply, the price is going to dump really fast.
yes,
Not a lot of people are going to win, which is why he and I guess other advocates of this plan would say, you know, you don't have to be one of these traders that's trying to time the market. Just hold on, see where the dust settles when the
see where
professional
the duff
traders have done
settle.
their work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just trust that it's not going to, if we 1,000x the supply, uh, it's not gonna completely tank the price to zero. You might end up better off just sitting there and not doing anything. Just don't worry about it. Just
Yeah.
hold it and just don't worry about it. That's
Well,
that's possible.
the very likely effect of something like that, obviously, the value of of Dash will, just because of the redenomination, just because of the airdrop. Let's call it the airdrop thing or the hyperinflation method.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
of the hyperinflation method, it's going to introduce extreme price volatility, at least in the short term, and
Mhm.
that's pretty much guaranteed. And the other guarantee is that it might, it definitely, from the price it should be, the price it started at, it will end on a downturn, which, if you believe in momentum, could end up in a net dumping of like the market cap being lower than it used to be. I don't know if that will be a case, but obviously, if like the price is 200 per dash, and then it starts to become way less because of the airdrop or the hyperinflation, people are selling all the way down, even though it's a very fast down, right? They're trying to sell all the way down, and so it ends on a sell, possibly. The momentum is down, which could mean the demand is down, 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 and then you could grab market cap. It could be a disaster. I don't know. That's a
Right, but
little simplistic,
some
but
price, there's going to be some traders that say, "Hey, this is oversold," and they're going to buy. They're going to be the ones buying, and you're going to be the one selling, and they're going to win, and the price will recover, and you'll be the sucker that sold early. And
of course,
we don't have to talk about this too much, but I just wanted to say that this is an option that people should be considering more than they probably might
yeah,
instinctively do. It's
because
worth thinking
instinctively
about.
people are
It's worth
freaking out.
considering. And it is the easy option in terms of like business development, and like Ryan would basically not have to do much on this. There's some development work, but you don't have to talk to exchanges, nothing. So that is the benefit, is that the third parties, you don't have to coordinate a lot there. You just have to let the market work out what the new price is going to be, and that could be better or worse than it is now.
Yeah.
But there's this third option that I wanted to get into
Well, first, just
that's
to
the
conclude
least
on that,
risky.
we did get
Yeah.
a question, which is Pozo asked. I thought it was obvious, but he wants clarification. If we mint those, would those airdrops go to current holders or to masternodes and miners? Just to be sure on that.
Current holders.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Anybody who holds any amount of Dash would be eligible for that.
Yes. So to categorize the first two kind of approaches before we go to the third, the first one is technically easy. Like you just change a little denomination. There's very little disruption as far as you have all the Dash. You still have the exact same coins. It's just that they're accounted
They just have a
differently.
new name. Yeah,
It's an accounting
it's an
difference,
accounting
but
difference.
it's a little bit of an integrations ball ache, right? It's just like everyone
Yes.
upgrades, but then like, well, but who displays it as this? What is this? I'm confused. It's a little bit of more confusing. The airdrop hyperinflation method is not like it doesn't change anything as far as like everything from a technical standpoint and integration standpoint and all that, all the biz dev stuff. It stays exactly the same, but it just dumps heaps of it causes a lot of market chaos, let's just say. Possibly not a lot
Hmm.
of market chaos, but it causes a certain degree of market chaos. And then the third option, go ahead on that one.
Yeah, the third option is the punt. It's almost like 1B. It's very similar to one in that
Mm-hmm.
you're just renaming something.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of redefining what a DASH
Mm-hmm.
is, you're just saying, hey, let's create a new unit. Let's create a name for 100 satoshis or duffs,
Yeah.
100 base units, just like option one,
Mm-hmm.
kind of says let's focus on 100 duffs being the new dash.
Mm-hmm.
Option three here is saying let's come up with a new name for that 100 duffs, and let's make that the default. Let's contact the exchanges. Let's say, hey, we have this new unit we want to redenominate, and I'm just going to use for an example a ticker of XDD.
Mm-hmm.
Um, DD could stand for anything you want, but I would
Dash.
say like digital dollars or dash
Or
dollars or something, but it doesn't matter. That's not even the name that we'd have to have. But there's some name that's not DASH, um,
mm-hmm.
and you create that and you say, hey, exchanges, this is the new ticker for Dash. It's XDD and it's worth 100 base units, which means it's worth 1 millionth of a Dash right now. And
Mm-hmm.
so please list this new ticker, and eventually or immediately, depending on how you want to implement this,
Mm-hmm.
um, deprecate the DASH ticker, and all the trading pairs that were DASH trading pairs, make them XDD trading pairs with 1,000,000 to 1 difference in magnitude. And
Mm-hmm.
so obviously, like, there's no there is market activity, but it's not like, oh, I need to sell because I have a lot more of these dash things like option two was.
Yeah.
The market might say, hey, this is great, like this is awesome, we're going to get better units. The project's alive, apparently they're still around. Like, just the fact of calling all the exchanges and all the partners and all the analytics companies, that alone,
Is
just to get
horrendous.
people thinking about Dash again, could be worth, could make the whole thing worth it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we need to contact all these people anyway because a lot of people have forgotten about Dash.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I see that as a benefit, not a cost. It will take a lot of time and a lot of coordination, but that's going to get Dash back on the radar. And once we kind of do this, people will be like, hey, like, what's Dash doing? Apparently the price is, I can't find the Dash ticker or whatever, but I see the logo is still there. It's just under a new ticker.
Yeah.
And apparently it's the price is, instead of 170, it's 0.000170.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. And so all these things, like, that's all attention grabbing stuff that Dash could use a little bit of right now. But
Mm-hmm.
not to say, like, I don't think this is a dying project like a lot of people think.
Yeah.
It's just that we're not seen. We're just heads down, and we
Mm-hmm.
need to stop doing that. But um, yeah, that's option three, is to basically replace the ticker DASH with some new ticker.
Yes.
And in my opinion, you wouldn't want it to be like a name or something, because then if it's a name that can be spoken, then that kind of competes with the branding. Like
Mm-hmm.
uh, this whole option does kind of dilute the brand Dash, because
Mm-hmm.
now you have a different ticker. But if you don't have it be a name, like I didn't like the dot idea, because then it's like, is this project Dash or is this project Dot? Now that that's not an option, that's not a thing anymore. But you could think of something like hyphen or some weird name,
Mm-hmm.
that you can speak. That's not a good idea. I think a better idea is to have three letters that can't be spoken as a word, which, by the way, is an initialism. For all you English grammars, it's not an
Mm-hmm.
acronym; it's an initialism. Um, so you want it to be something that like XMR. There's a lot of things that start with X, and the reason for that is there's an ISO standard, ISO, International Standards Organization, or whatever, that defines what currency tickers should be like. And all the national currencies, they start with the first two letters of their national
Mm-hmm.
code. Like
Yeah.
like United States is US, and you know people are familiar with
MX
this.
and
But if you're not a national currency, then the standard is to start with an X. It's an ISO standard. You can look it up.
mm-hmm.
It's like 4,000 something. And that's why you see a lot of these cryptocurrencies like XMR and XRP and XTZ, that choose these ticker numbers, because they're kind of complying with this standard. Um, and that's nice, and we can do that as well. That's what XEC did as well. X eCash,
Mm-hmm.
they chose this method also. And so we would be right in the camp with all those guys. So it wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
anything like unprecedented. It would be familiar to people, and it would accomplish the redenomination. And so this is probably the safest and easiest option. I would say it's definitely the easiest, definitely the safest. The only downside to this is that you lose a little bit of the branding with Dash. Like, we can't
Mm-hmm.
call our units Dash anymore. That could be
Yeah.
considered a pro, though. That could be considered on the pro side rather than the con side, because it kind of you don't have that two different things meaning the same, having the same name. Like, is this Dash the unit? Is this Dash the ticker? Is this Dash the economy ecosystem? No. Okay, so it's the ticker. So it makes it a little bit more clear that this is the ticker. So that could be considered a benefit as well. Um, but another thing is, there was one other thing. Basically, it's kind of like, it's a pretty good option that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to consider, because I like the first option better, because I like using the units of Dash,
Mm-hmm.
both because we've always been using that, but I liked that the branding of Dash comes out with the ticker and with the unit itself. But it's not necessary, and most other projects don't have that. Most other projects don't have their ticker symbol as the uh, don't have their name as the ticker symbol. So
Yeah. So we're right around like the hour and a half mark
yep,
here. Went over a lot of stuff. This is preliminary, right?
yep.
And there's a couple of, I mean, obviously there's a few options on the table. This is just to get the issue out there a little bit. And there's something to think about when we're talking about pros and cons. The ultimate reason for the pro on the pro side is, of course, to make it viable as a money someday. And
Usability. Yep.
yes,
I
that's the
mean, we're a coin that's like, usability is our number one priority. That's why we're doing names. That's why we're doing all this stuff, because we want it
yes.
to be very usable. This is just one more thing in the usability category.
And so uh, the other part of usability, honestly, is usability for investors. And this is the part that people That it's literally the undercurrent of this entire discussion. A lot of people don't like talking about it, but I'm talking about it, which is
Mhm.
this will hopefully pump the price like it did with eCash. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's an undercurrent behind the positive price action on that of this has more utility, therefore it's worth speculating on its future better, and a little bit of, oh look, they aren't just stuck in the mud, they're doing new things. That's a good sign for a project. There's a little bit
Mhm.
of that. A lot of that is also like I bought like Doge's when Doge goes to 4 cents, I'm a billionaire. Like the kind of like they want to buy a fistful of Doges, right? They want to buy like that's why Bitcoiners switch to buy a little bit of a Bitcoin because not everyone knows you can do that. They're like stack sats because investors want to buy a big bag of things
Mhm.
and then it goes up. Like no one wants to buy like a half a dash and then I might have like 3/4 of a dash now. Like it's investors if they can buy something in so hopefully it goes up. They want a big bag of these things. And it's just like the weird psychology of things, which is funny because it is the utility thing, like manageable units rather than decimal points. But users today are investors and it
Yeah.
encourages investment. So,
It's a happy coincidence, right?
mm-hmm,
As you can see from this conversation, I truly believe that the main purpose of this is usability. Digital
mm-hmm,
cash actually being used in commerce, being able to use whole numbers, that's the primary focus for me.
yeah,
But it just happens to be really nice that doing that also has the psychological side effect that when people are buying. Now, I don't think investors care too much about like major investors. They're
major, no.
sophisticated enough to know that it's market cap that you have to be working against to move a price, not
Mm-hmm,
price. Like a low price is meaningless in terms of liquidity. What matters is the market cap. Um, and sophisticated investors know that. But the retail investors, the person down the street, the person that you talk to at Thanksgiving dinner table, they definitely want something that they can have a big pile of. They don't want to have
mm-hmm,
0.01 of something. It's they just don't. And on the tipping side, I think of it as the tipping side. Like you don't want to tip somebody 0.0037. It's meaningless. It's nothing. It's an insult almost. But if you tip somebody 30,000 of something, or 1,000 of something, even if it's not worth that much, it feels better. And feeling is important. How people feel about their investment is incredibly important.
mm-hmm.
How people feel about wanting to invest in something, that's incredibly important. So I'm not in the camp that like price doesn't matter, market cap doesn't matter. It does.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely important. So if that's a nice side effect of this, that's just
Yeah.
one more good reason to do it, right? And if that's your only reason for wanting to do this, then just take the nice, usable units as a nice side benefit. It doesn't matter to me what your motivation is, but this needs to be done.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little, well, there's just like 2 seconds wrapping this whole thing up, but like some of the negative stuff, other than we talked about like the disaster of a situation where like the confusion in like version 1 and version 3, which I would call version 1B. 1 and 1B would be
Mhm.
confusion. 1B is like especially you have to just ask exchanges to do something that like why don't you list these units instead? Like that confusion. Version 2 being the market chaos, which Hilawi quite interestingly pointed out could constitute a taxable event because it's like an airdrop, and that could cause a lot of issues with regulators and stuff. But
Mm.
the other thing is when you're changing things, think of Bitcoin, Boomer Coin, is the entire pretty much all of Bitcoin's value now. Maybe I'm making a big assumption here, but I mean, it wasn't that way in the beginning, maybe, but a lot of its value now comes from the fact that it didn't change, comes from the fact
Mhm.
that, and I argue a lot of it did change, but that's a different conversation going back to the scaling wars. But uh, the thing is, like, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. 1 Bitcoin is always this, ever and ever. Oh man, it's like
Mhm.
that whole thing. And when you're like changing Dash to be like, oh, with the times, like we're trying to evolve, and you're like, what? You're just chasing hype stuff. It can be changed every time you change something fundamental, like how many Dash there will be. Even if it just you call it a different thing, some people will abandon the project because just they don't believe in it. It's hard money. It's, or as Amari Sachet would
Yeah.
say, hard money. They don't think it's
Mhm.
hard money anymore because it can be changed, and that's the entire. So there's some people who do that, and but the other side of things, and I've noticed this firsthand. Any guess what the number one most viewed video on this channel is?
Hmm. I don't know.
Let me hit you up with it real quick. The by a mile, it is my interview with Amari Sachet on eCash, Bitcoin ABC's rebirth as eCash at 17,000
Rebrand.
views, which is not very very large. Whatever, it's a shitty channel. But the second most viewed is why does the price of Bitcoin cryptocurrencies go up? And of course, it's a price talk thing, even though it's that's at 13,000 views. The next most viewed one is should you run your own Bitcoin Lightning wallet at 4.2 thousand. So obviously people care about price, but the biggest one is Amari or
Hmm.
eCash or
Well,
Redenom. And you know why? Because to a lot of people, it's a new and exciting project now. Every Twitter thread I'm tagged and everything is full of these like price go up, what's new with coin, like all the most annoying people possible. And I hate it, but there's no denying there's new people. There's a lot of
yeah.
people who didn't give anything about Bitcoin ABC. They're now into eCash because, oh, it's a new thing. I can buy a bunch. It will chase out a lot of old people or old investors, but it'll bring in a whole bunch of new pumpy people. And maybe Dash needs fresh blood. I don't know. Who
Well,
knows?
I would like to ride on that, but
Uh huh.
unfortunately, I don't think our redenomination will have that quite that much, you know,
Yeah.
juice there because they did a whole rebrand, and it made a lot of people think that hey, this is a new project,
Mm-hmm.
um, when in reality it's a fork of a fork.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was a brilliant rebrand, like eCash, perfect. They got the right ticker symbol. They got a nice name. They got a nice magnitude for their primary unit. Like they did a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things right, and they have some pretty good technology. Also, it's not just a. I like the project. I don't
Yeah.
have any of it, but
And well, I only have a million because someone gave me a million, so I'm a millionaire and something. Um,
yeah. See, there you go.
but
That's my point.
but I have to also say that of all the things that eCash is that Amari specifically, but eCash has been talking about other projects and parallels. The only consistently positive one was Dash. It basically just says we want to do exactly what Dash is doing, but be able to evolve faster and move on things better.
Mm,
And that's
and they're
literally
doing that.
what they're doing. They're doing thing. There's, I believe, a lot of key compromises or that they've made in ways in which they're behind by a significant amount, but
Right.
in other ways, including this issue, I think they're ahead. And even if Dash never goes to a redenomination, or it just ends up being a wallet naming thing later down the line, even if that happens, even if Dash is not heading that way, at least it's a step forward. Even if it's a bad step forward, but it's still a step forward that they've taken that Dash hasn't in that way. So
Yeah.
that's worth noting. All right, so let's just kind of like wrap this up. Discussion on this. I have seen heavy in the Dash Discord, in primarily the general channel, but maybe general channel and the Dash Economics channel. Those two
Hmm.
places where I've seen a lot of this. Are you aware of any other places that listeners of this can go to see this issue as it is continued to be developed in the chats?
No, those are the two main places. Although, at some point, see, the reason I'm doing most of my discussion in Discord is because I'm brainstorming ideas, but it definitely should be posted to the forums now that it's getting a little bit more traction. And
Mm-hmm.
I should say that, before I forget, one of the reasons why we're on this interview right now is because not because of anything that I did right now, because I've just been kind of doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
What changed is that we saw Ryan come out and say again, he said it before again that he's for this plan. He wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do this back in Ryan Taylor is who I'm talking about now, DCG
Mm-hmm.
CEO. He came and said, I'd like this to happen. I want it to. It would be nice to have. I'm for it. So hopefully we can get something going where
Yeah.
DCG spearheads this again, um, and makes it happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So because let's be honest, it probably would not be going anywhere unless DCG did support it. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
DCG is not, just a big blob. It's there's a bunch of people in there with different opinions, and I think one of the challenges was uh, Ryan probably, or he said that the developers were saying this is too difficult. We can't do this, and that might have been in reference to the redenomination of redefining the dash. Um, I don't see how that's too tricky from a coding standpoint, but definitely this option three, which I'm kind of conceding to because it's better than nothing, definitely better than nothing. Of just coming up with a new name for the ticker and just saying, "Hey, this is the new default ticker." Exchanges get on board. Everybody else will get on board after that. The price charts. We haven't talked about this, but the price charts. if you do a if you do a rebrand, like a rebrand of the ticker, I think that price charts will get the memo and they will adjust their historical data accordingly. You won't just see this price of like 200 da 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 and then crash down to
Mm-hmm.
0.000200. They will know, oh, this has always been representing the same thing, so we should just
Mm-hmm.
back adjust the historical data. With option two, you don't get that because it really is the dash that are losing value.
Mm-hmm.
With the options one and three, people will probably feel compelled, like CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko and all the analytics companies, they will feel compelled to readjust their data to fit the new normal, the new ticker, the
Yeah.
new prices. If we can get the exchanges on board, that's all that we need to do.
Get them exchanges on
And
board.
that I would hope that that the Dash core developers would see that, hey, okay, yeah, this is actually probably a pretty easy change, coding wise. It's just a hard job for the executive team and business team
Mm-hmm.
to kind of get all the exchanges on board. That's where the hard work is with this.
Yeah, the real groundwork. Well, this has been an enlightening chat. Um, you're at Ryan Gull on Twitter, and you're Ryan Gull at or Ryan in the Discords. And do you Telegram at all?
Not really. So yeah, back to your question about the discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, if you have any questions, throw them in the general channel or the Dash Economics channel.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy to answer. And if you go there, even right now, you'll see some tables, some describing what I've talked about verbally. You'll see it in a nice, easy to consume format there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, at some point I'll make some forum posts so that it's nice and tidy and everything. But with that said, this is still in the initial phases. I'm not coming out and saying these are your only three options. I'm
Yeah.
just saying this is what I've thought of. If you have a better idea, great. If you can refine some of these ideas, even better. But at some point, we got to rally behind one of these things and just make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so the communities definitely should be involved in that. But if you don't want to be, just get out of the way. I would ask,
Well,
if
there
you
we
if you
go.
don't, if you don't have, uh, yeah, Yeah. If you're just a naysayer and you don't have any good ideas about how to fix this, or
Mm-hmm.
if you just want to complain about it, just don't. Just get out of the way. Let the people that are willing to work do their job, and we'll get this done. And you'll be happier for it, even if you're against it now.
Well, that's a great conclusion to this whole thing. It seems like there's really momentum by like people who've been talking about it for years. It's like, let's get this done. Let's bundle it with the mainnet release of Dash Platform, aka Evolution, and just have a whole new spring to our step in 2022, which will be a great. By then, hopefully, we got Thorchain integrated and we got Dash Direct's virtual Mastercard thing going. So then we just have like everything, and then
Yep.
new coat of paint after the the bull market peak is over, baby. But who cares? At some point, just you got to do stuff. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for donating. After this is the typical after party where it's just kind of like a chat like this, informal chat, goes on for a long time. It's not recorded. Don't worry. And the way you get there, you go to the Dash Discord, which is Stay Dashy, DSHY. StayDashy.com gets you to the Dash Discord. You start asking around, or if you know how to contact me on Twitter, Telegram, whatever, my handle's always the same, then I'll put you in there. I won't be there immediately. I'll be there a little bit later, but there will be some people immediately there. And yeah, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching, and yeah, look forward to more discussions on this topic. And thanks once more, Ryan, for coming in and chatting about this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye, guys.